Hello YouTube, I wanted to talk to you today about privilege in the craft and being privileged on YouTube and just the concept of gatekeeping. I've talked about in previous videos about how YouTube suppresses spiritual-based content such as mine, yours, and many other channels. They do this because they're privileged. It's all about being privileged. You have to talk about certain things. You have to speak in specific manners. You can't talk about this, that, or the other thing. And if you do, you get suppressed. Now, where does that tie in to witchcraft? Because in witchcraft, there is a concept of privilege. It's when eclectic witches tend to mix in, say, voodoo with Wicca, or they start to take other racial that's not a word, heritage-based spiritual beliefs and racial-based spiritual beliefs and mix it into their craft without a care in the world. And to those people, they're also privileged. But there's another form of privilege that is prevalent in the witchy community, and I talked about it in the dark side of TikTok, and that is gatekeeping. There are many forms of gatekeeping that is extremely offensive to witches on the internet, specifically in communities such as YouTube, communities such as Facebook. There's a lot of gatekeeping that goes on in Facebook groups where people ask for spells and then other people will say that's too advanced for you. The word advanced is a form of suppression in the spiritual community. It keeps new witches down. I don't like the concept new witch because that's also a form of suppression. When you suppress somebody in the witchy community, you're basically saying you're not allowed to do this. You're not allowed to look at this. By attacking other witches who may be male, who practice witchcraft, and calling them sexist is a form of suppression and privilege. By attacking gay men who practice witchcraft and share their craft, and yes, I'm talking about myself specifically, that is a form of suppression. It is also a form of homophobia, and it is also a form of gatekeeping. Witchcraft is not like being a doctor, where a first-year med student might do some basic tiny surgery and be denied access to doing more advanced heart surgery, okay? Witchcraft is akin to Christianity. Before you get deeply offended by that, hear me out. What I mean is that you wouldn't tell a Christian that certain prayers, certain masses, certain engagements in the Christian community is advanced and that you can't do that because you're a new Christian. According to Christian beliefs, God welcomes everybody and Jesus is the one true Savior for everyone and anybody. In witchcraft, however, there is a lot of gatekeeping. There is a lot of just toxicity, especially in newer social media platforms like TikTok and in platforms like Facebook. Witchcraft today has become less about the craft and less about the spiritual aspect of the craft, and more about the $350 sage stick and the $750 fancy altars. It's not about practicing the craft in any meaningful way anymore, and that is a form of privilege. People who are able to blow up their altars are privileged. People who don't get their witchcraft-related videos suppressed by YouTube are privileged. But that's not really the point that I want to talk about. It's the gatekeeping aspect. So for an example of that, I have a comment on one of my most recent videos, a live video, where I talked about graveyard dirt. I'm not saying that this person in particular is gatekeeping or advancing the cause of gatekeeping. But there's a particular word in here I want you to pay attention to. Technically, under most understandings, that is desecrating graves. I was talking about physically removing dirt from a person's grave that you have no relation to. Just going to, say, a murderer's or a judge's or a doctor's grave and digging the dirt up and taking it away with you. I have read about the subject matter a bit in the past. The dirt is paid for by gifting offerings along with asking and helping build relationships with whatever spirit, the extracting an honorable amount, etc. Not something I've done, but the dirt's essence offer up the spirit's energy, if ever needed, from what I understood. Here is the problem that I have, not with this particular commenter, but with a particular phrase. I feel like this type of thing is for the very advanced. Again, I'm not saying that that particular commenter is spreading gatekeeping or spreading privilege around. It's just that their opinion is that particular aspect of witchcraft is for the very advanced. Now, I have seen this concept be thrown around on TikTok, and I've seen it thrown around on Facebook groups. I used to see it thrown around on YouTube videos quite often in the past. I've also seen it a little bit, not a lot, because again, most people on Instagram are posting their pretty fancy privileged altars. Why is advanced such an issue? What is wrong with somebody saying you're not advanced enough, or this is too advanced for me? When you say things about yourself, whether you're new, experienced, or whatever, even those terms, new and experienced in the witchcraft community, is a form of suppression. When you say to yourself, I'm too new as a witch, this is too advanced for me, you are suppressing yourself. You are saying that not only, you might be thinking on one term, I'm not ready for this. That's a more appropriate way of phrasing it. I'm not ready to learn this. I'm not ready to practice this. That doesn't suppress you. That states that eventually you will be ready to practice that or to learn that particular aspect. But to say I'm a new witch or you're a new witch is a form of suppression. To say you're a new witch, that's too advanced for you. That is a form of gatekeeping. Witchcraft is nothing more than a spiritual practice involving spiritual energy. At the end of the day, all magic is energy. There is no levels in witchcraft. This isn't Harry Potter. There is no beginner, basic, you have to do this, blah, blah, blah. In the olden days of YouTube, there were witches that would talk about the year in a day. That you have to study and read for a year and a day. And there are other witches that were talking about how you have to study and read for a certain amount of time before even thinking about practicing spells or even buying herbs or tools. Because it was advanced. It was something that more experienced, more studied, more learned witches did, and that you were to stick to your books. That is a form of gatekeeping and privilege out the gate. Literally, pun intended. When we say these things, we are suppressing ourselves. We are saying that we are not smart enough, that we are not like the Lady Grave Dancer or Ember Honeyraven or whoever else you may look up to or put on a pedestal. Okay? There is no advanced concepts in witchcraft. There are no things that you can't do right out of the gate from picking up, be it a Scott Cunningham book, a Buckland's book, or any other witchcraft-related book. And it's really disheartening to hear other witches talk about advanced subject material and labeling it as advanced subject material. Oh, this is for, those who've been practicing for 15 years. When people throw around that they've been practicing for 30, 40 years, while that might be true, that is another form of suppression. It makes those who have been practicing for a year or two feel less than. It makes them feel like they're not a part of the community until they get to the same level as you. And that's not fair. I've seen over the last 5 years of being on YouTube a lot of privilege. I've seen a lot of gatekeeping. And recently the gatekeeping is coming back. But the gatekeeping, as I mentioned in the dark side of TikTok, is largely on TikTok. It's also on Facebook groups and starting to make a presence. And as I grow a bit more on TikTok from just sharing my magical workings, they're starting to come to my channel, and I've made a grave mistake in using the TikTok platform, unfortunately. And these are hard lessons that I have to learn, unfortunately. Because these people come from TikTok, and I don't know if this particular commenter came from TikTok. Again, I'm not coming after the commenter, so please calm down. But there have been other people who have come from TikTok that have stated, oh, you're not supposed to do this. This isn't for white people. You're not allowed to talk about the subject. Specifically on my older videos, where there may be hoodoo-esque elements to them, but they're more traditional craft-related practices more than cultural appropriation. I've seen a lot of talk about cultural appropriation on TikTok, specifically from white people. And anytime I was following this one lady and she was talking about cultural appropriation, and I checked back on her video the next day and I was just scrolling through some of the comments, and a lot of the comments had avatars that were predominantly African American. And within an hour, all of those comments were removed. And they were mostly comments about how white people shouldn't really talk about cultural appropriation because white people stomp all over other racial traditions and racial spiritual practices and claim it for themselves. And I can totally understand that because I've seen that in the YouTube community. I've seen that in the Facebook community. I've also seen a lot of gatekeeping recently, specifically in Facebook groups starting to creep up, and on some of my older videos talking about how I don't know what I'm talking about. This is for more advanced witches. You're not supposed to talk about this. Even on my oldest of old videos, which is the conversation with the universe, I recently deleted a comment by a person who said that tarot cards were not meant for me because they're for advanced people, advanced practitioners. You can either be a tarot reader or you can be a witch, but you can't be both. And obviously, every one of you in the comment section will easily call bullshit on that. There's a lot of sexism going on in the witchy community on TikTok and a little bit on Facebook now about male practitioners specifically. And in Facebook, I've seen a few conversations get shut down by the admins of those Facebook groups because they were talking about how gay men are invading witchcraft. These are all forms of privilege, suppression. They're forms of gatekeeping, in some instances talking about certain types of magical practices that you aren't advanced enough to do, that you haven't practiced long enough to do. When you tell somebody, and recently I had a comment about this on one of my live videos, which was the Graveyard Dirt video, when the person had commented along the lines of, your craft is all over the place, this is why you feel this way. That is a form of gatekeeping. Telling me to go and read specific books to get my craft in order is a form of gatekeeping, suppression, and privilege. It's privilege when you have the audacity to sit there and tell somebody how to practice their craft, or that their craft doesn't match up or line up with how you think the craft should be practiced. We used to have a lot of Wicca thumpers back in the days going around saying, you're not allowed to practice this threefold, threefold, threefold. You're not allowed to do this threefold, threefold, threefold. And we've also had a lot of people going around in the past basically telling other people how to practice their witchcraft, or saying, you don't work with this goddess. You're not allowed to work with this goddess. This goddess only works with these people. This god doesn't exist. You can't work with a non-existent god. Or demons aren't real. You must be faking it. All of this is fakery. These are people who have problems in their life, emotional, psychological, and mental problems. These are people who are very angry on the inside, and the only way that they know how to express that anger is to lash out at other people who they see as doing better than themselves. And it's disgusting. So next time you think about using terms like, I'm too new, that's too advanced, maybe think about using terms like, I'm not ready for that right now. Because it's less of a suppressing, self-degrading type of comment. It's okay that you might consider yourself new, but to say to another witch, oh, you're too new, that's too advanced, not only is that gatekeeping, but that's really showing your privilege. And that's not okay. The witchcraft community already gets suppressed enough by YouTube and other platforms that look to stomp out its existence because its controversial nature and talking about things that aren't A, Christian, B, family-friendly, or C, Republican. Okay? So I hope that you got something out of this video, and until next time, tubies. And to be honest with you, we don't know when next time is. Ta-ta for now.